Greetings. I'm Zeb Sanders III. For those of you who are new to my teachings, as well as for those who need a reminder of the basis from which I speak, I'll begin this teaching by providing you with a summary of my message in the section Introduction. Following the introduction will be a section titled Scientific Method. In that section, I will compare the process used to validate Einstein's general theory of relativity with the process that I've been using to validate my revelation that we are in the midst of a 7-stage divine intervention that began in 1992. This comparison will illustrate that I too have been using the very same scientific method, the Western world's gold standard for determining whether what is proposed is true or not, to prove to you that the 7-stage universal law is real and is compelling the earth and human society to conform to its process of creating a new earth and a new world order. Finally, in the section The Ultimate Proof, I will present what up to this point may be the ultimate proof of the divine's presence and the reality of its laws, process, and power. In 1992, I revealed that the planet had entered into what Christians call a new dispensation and what others may call a new age. In fact, what we encountered and are yet in the midst of is a divine intervention. Beckoned by the cries and prayers of the oppressed, this intervention is the return of the creative force to its creation for the purpose of exacting judgment against corrupt, inhumane, malevolent, criminal, Western civilization and its United States of America and the American world order. My work up to this point has been to scientifically prove that such an intervention is taking place and that Source is orchestrating it. Source, which you may call God, Allah, Olodumare, Labanza, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Ama, Amun, Ptah, Pemba, Jehovah, Tino Ta'ata, Tangoroa, Tiramal, Jesus, by whatever name you refer to the creative force, is rendering its judgment as well as dispensing its justice in 7 stages. Together, these 7 stages compose a universal law. This 7-stage law functions on the one hand as a transition process, transitioning us from one age into a new era or dispensation, while at the same time it functions as a creative process, disintegrating the corrupted earth and world of the outgoing age, then utilizing the remains to create a new planet and a new world order. That the divine intervened beginning in 1992 can be proven by demonstrating the existence, operation, and impact of its 7-stage law. Such a proof can be provided by following the same method scientists use to validate Einstein's general theory of relativity, the scientific method. Let's consider that method. In November 1915, Einstein published 4 papers introducing his theory of general relativity. Contrary to Newton's law of universal gravity, which had been Western science's standard for more than 2 centuries, Einstein contended that gravity was not an attractive force between all objects, but was the result of massive bodies such as planets and stars, creating a curvature or warp of space and time. Einstein thus predicted that since light, having no mass, travels on the surface of space-time, that if space-time traveling in a straight line is made to curve by the presence of a celestial body such as a star or planet, then light too would curve, appearing to deviate from its original path by a tiny amount. In the case of a ray of light emitting from a distant star and passing by the sun, Einstein predicted a deflection of 1.75 arc seconds. Newton's law predicted a deflection of 0.87 arc seconds. In 1919, the conditions were right to test Einstein's prediction. On May 29, there would be a total solar eclipse while the sun was positioned near the Hyades cluster of stars. The sun being eclipsed would allow for the observation and measurement of these stars' apparent positions. These measurements would then be compared to positions of the very same stars taken at night earlier in the year in January and February when the sun was not near the cluster. If Einstein was correct, then the presence of the sun would make the stars appear to have slightly shifted their positions. The sun would curve space-time, making the light rays from the stars bend away from their actual positions taken in January and February by 1.75 arc seconds. To record the positions of the stars, two astronomy teams set out to 2 points along the path of the eclipse, one to the island of Principe off the west coast of Africa, and the other to Sobral, Brazil. Each expedition would photograph the positions of the stars during the eclipse. Once recorded, the photographic plates would then be taken from the expeditions to be compared against the images of the stars in their January and February positions. Additionally, the photographic plates taken in Sobral, Brazil were compared to images taken of the stars 2 months after the expedition at the Sobral site, when the sun had moved away from the star cluster to another point in the sky. After months of analysis, on November 6, at a joint meeting of the Royal Society and the Royal Astronomical Society, Sir Frank Watson Dyson, Astronomer Royal of Britain, who had conceived the experiment, Sir Arthur Eddington, director of the Cambridge Observatory, who led the experiment and who conducted the expedition at Principe, and astronomer Andrew Crommelin of the Royal Greenwich Observatory, who conducted the expedition at Sobral, Brazil, announced their findings. Dyson concluded, quote, "After a careful study of the plates, I am prepared to say there can be no doubt that they confirm Einstein's prediction. A very definite result has been obtained that light is deflected in accordance with Einstein's law of gravitation." End of quote. In fact, by combining the results from the two locations, the team calculated a deflection of about 1.87 arc seconds, making Einstein's prediction of 1.75 arc seconds more accurate than that of Newton's at 0.87. Thus, Einstein's law had prevailed, and the centuries-old Newtonian formulation of the laws of gravity were superseded. However, there is an important distinction to consider. During his part of the presentation, Eddington warned, quote, "This effect may be taken as proving Einstein's law rather than his theory," end of quote. This point is critical because it distinguishes between a law and a theory. A law tells you how something will behave. A theory seeks to explain what caused the behavior. In Einstein's case, it was proven that light bends around or is deflected by a celestial body in its path to a degree near to what he had predicted. That was his law. Yet his theory that this deflection of light is caused by a warp or curvature of space and time had not been proven. My purpose for relating how Einstein's general relativity was validated is to illustrate the method used to do so. It is critical that you understand this method, the scientific method, so that you can see that it is the very method I use to validate my 7-stage law. It is the West's gold standard for proving that what is proposed actually exists, is the truth. My videos up to this point have been quite detailed, so what I'm going to do here is give a simple outline of the scientific method as it was enacted in proving Einstein's law, and compare that outline to a sketch of the method I've been using. My intent, again, is to show you that I too utilize the scientific method with as much care and adherence to its standard of precision and detail. By this highest of Western methods, I too have validated my revelation that we are in the midst of a divine intervention, that we are presently in the 4th stage of the 7-stage process, transitioning the planet into a new dispensation, the Aquarian era, as witnessed by the creation of a new earth and a new world or social order. Let me here compare the two methods. Let us begin by considering the laws and the theories explaining them. First, Einstein's law states that light rays passing the sun would be deflected by 1.75 arc seconds. Laws tell you how something will behave. Einstein's theory is that this deflection of light is caused by the sun's curving or warping of space and time. A theory seeks to explain why a thing behaves as it does. It tells you what caused the behavior. My law states that the earth and America and its world order are being transformed into a new earth and a new world order by way of the 7-stage process. For argument's sake, what would be considered my theory is that Source has intervened and is causing this transformation through its 7-stage process. After the declaration of a theory and a law, the predictions made by the law are then tested. In Einstein's case, the astronomer Frank Watson Dyson designed an experiment to test Einstein's prediction. And as I just related, the experiment was conducted by 2 teams of astronomers. Unlike Einstein, though, like many other scientists, I designed and conducted experiments to test the predictions of my law. You can view those experiments in detail by watching my previous videos. Following, I briefly describe my process. The year Source initiated its intervention in 1992, I published a treatise and other documents to spread the news that we have just entered the Aquarian era. Though I first revealed the 7-stage law in its entirety in 1998 in my book, And Now There Is Aquarius, I couldn't demonstrate the accuracy of the law's predictions until 2017, when the key pieces of evidence became available. The 2016 events, one occurring in the domain of the earth and the other in the realm of the social order, and the processes leading to them, would prove the law's existence and its power to compel the earth and the social order to conform to its intent. In the 1992 treatise, I declared that 2016 would mark the crisis point in the first 30 years of the era. The crisis point, I went on, quote, will be characterized by a great and intense radiation of energy or life force that will declare itself throughout the earth, and that it will assume many forms, end of quote. Consequently, the physical expressions of this crisis, one representing a critical turning point in the evolution of the earth, the other a crisis point in the human social order, will present themselves undeniably on the grand scale worldwide in 2016. Though they did manifest, the evidence needed to help you recognize what you had experienced would not be immediately available. So I had to wait for the proof. Here it is important to note that in 2016, we entered the 4th stage of the 7-stage process of transition and creation. Now in 2021, we are in the last year of the 4th stage. Therefore, I have only been able to prove the first 4 stages of my law. Initially in 2017, I collected evidence for the years 1998 through 2016 and have been collecting evidence for the succeeding years until the present as it becomes available. I begin at 1998 because that year marks the onset of the 2nd stage, the stage at which the seed of what Source intends to create is revealed. Therefore, the years 1998 through 2016 coincide with the 2nd and 3rd stages of the law and the first year of the 4th stage. The complete 4th stage is covered by evidence gathered through 2021. For our purposes now, we will be considering stages 2, 3, and 4 of the 7-stage universal law. Each stage describes how something will behave during that particular period of time. Each stage works with the preceding stage as well as the stage it follows as part of the process of bringing a new era, a new earth, and a new world into being. Therefore, the evidence I present must not only behave according to the description of the stage during which it occurs, but must show a relationship to the preceding stage and a progression to the stage that follows it. Since I reveal that a new earth and a new world are being created, I had to look for that 2016 expression of an intense radiation of life force along both fronts. If found, then looking back through the years to 1998, there should be proof of the earth being fundamentally reconfigured and of the world, more specifically America and its world order, undergoing a radical change. As the 1992 intervention was announced by natural disasters, over the years I'd been loosely following trends and developments in climate and weather, particularly global warming. So when 2016 arrived, I anticipated the crisis to express itself as some notable climatic or weather-related event, such as a record-setting temperature. Such an event, I believe, would indicate a radical transformation of the Earth underway. Therefore, at the beginning of 2017, I checked for 2016's global average surface temperature and found what I was looking for. Regarding changes to the human social order, it was evident that I would find what I was looking for by looking to the unbelievable, shocking victory of Donald Trump. The first proposition of my law is that a new Earth is being created. Let me here explain how global average surface temperatures indicate a new Earth being created. Global average surface temperature is the most common measure of climate change. NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, states that, quote, climate change refers to both human and naturally produced warming of the Earth's climate system and the effects it has on our planet. It is most commonly measured as the average increase in Earth's global surface temperature. The bracketed part was added. If we remove their presumed source of the Earth's warming, which I'll address shortly, we note that global average surface temperatures are the most common gauge used to measure the warming of the Earth and the effects of the warming on the planet. Some of the effects of Earth's warming are accelerating loss of ice in Greenland, Antarctica, and the Arctic, accelerating sea level rise, the changing of flower plant blooming times, shrinking mountain glaciers that millions of people depend on for drinking water and agriculture, increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather such as hurricanes, heat waves, wildfires, droughts, floods, and precipitation, as well as changing cloud and vegetation cover. The warming is causing shifts in plant and animal habitats and is even projected to cause human populations to relocate to areas more conducive to survival and thriving. Together, the warming planet and these effects of the warming planet are simply the Earth undergoing a radical transformation. When seen accurately in its proper context, this radical transformation, which they refer to as climate change, is actually the Earth being intentionally created anew. Global average surface temperatures can thus be used to measure this creative process. More precisely, the behavior or pattern of global average surface temperatures can be used to confirm the existence and operation of this 7-stage creative process. To retrieve the global average surface temperature for 2016, I had to wait for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, to release their final analysis of 2016, which they did at the beginning of 2017. Both administrations concluded that 2016 was the hottest year ever recorded, that a new global heat record would be set the year I characterized 24 years earlier as, quote, a great and intense radiation of energy, end of quote, moved me to retrieve the remaining global average surface temperatures dating back to 1998. I aligned this data to the dates of stages 2 and 4 and then compared the pattern of temperatures to the behaviors predicted by stages 2, 3, and 4, as well as to the process that the stages together represent. I take you through this test in my first video, The Aquarian Era Began 1992, The Indisputable Evidence, Discovery of a Universal Law. As I demonstrated then, and as I will demonstrate again in the next section of this video, the global average surface temperatures behaved as the stage to which they corresponded predicted, and they exhibited a direct relationship to the temperature or temperatures of the preceding stage and a progression to the temperatures of the stage or stages that followed. This conformity proves that the law I revealed is dictating the Earth's warming, and by extension, the law is producing the effects of the warming, which is to say, the accelerated ice loss, sea level rise, the change of blooming times, the shrinking of mountain glaciers, the unprecedented weather extremes in every region and every continent, along with their impacts on human, animal, and other populations. In short, the law is creating a new Earth. Similar to Einstein, proof of my law's influence on the warming of the planet since 1998 contradicts the prevailing position held by 97% or more of actively publishing climate scientists throughout the world and most of the leading scientific organizations worldwide. They claim that since the pre-industrial period between 1850 and 1900, human-produced greenhouse gas emissions are largely responsible for warming our planet. The main human activities causing the warming, they contend, are the burning of fossil fuels, which increases heat-trapping greenhouse gas levels in Earth's atmosphere. An excerpt from the Geological Society of America's position statement on climate change, adopted in October of 2006 and most recently revised in April of 2020, serves to represent this position. Quote, "The Geological Society of America, GSA, concurs with the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, the National Research Council, the U.S. Global Change Research Program, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that global climate has warmed recently in response to increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide, CO2, and that human activities, mainly greenhouse gas emissions, are the dominant cause of rapid warming since the middle 1900s, while other natural factors contribute, at most, only marginally." End of quote. Moreover, one of the organizations mentioned in the statement, the United Nations-backed Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in their 2014 report summarizing the available scientific literature of the time, state that there exists a 95% certainty that human greenhouse gas emissions and other human activities like aerosol use and deforestation combined are responsible for over half to 100% of global warming for the period 1951 to 2010. My argument is not with their findings prior to 1992. Indeed, their findings provide one measure of the corrupt leadership, degenerate management, and abuse of power visited upon the planet and its inhabitants by Western civilization, which necessitated the divine intervention of 1992, earning America and its world order the divine's judgment against its existence. I contest not this scientific community's findings prior to 1992, but their position from 1992 forward. Their formulation of climate change is confined to human and naturally produced warming, as well as the additional warming produced through changes to the planet, betray the limits of their perception. And I don't mean this disrespectfully. They cannot be expected to account for that which exists beyond their realm of experience, for that which is contrary to their worldview, and consequently for that which they fail to comprehend and maybe even desire to acknowledge. It is for me, it's my responsibility to prove sources intervened and is orchestrating the behaviors of nature and humanity with the intent to create anew the earth and the world through its seven-stage universal law. This I have done using the scientific method for establishing truth. The second proposition of my law is that a new world or social order is being created. Again, knowing that 2016 is a crisis point, the beginning of the stage at which the disintegration of the old order makes way for the birth of a new world order, and having known for decades that Western civilization and its American world order are the old order to be disintegrated, I recognize the worldwide shock at Donald Trump being elected to the American presidency as another form of a great and intense radiation of energy that will declare itself throughout the earth, a discharge of Western civilization's life force. I intuitively understood what President Trump would come to prove, that he was the human embodiment of the fourth stage principle of disintegration. It was his function to accelerate and intensify the tearing apart of America and its world order. Realizing this, I knew to trace the American presidency back through 1998 for a possible pattern that adhered to the behaviors foretold by the second, third, and fourth stages of the seven-stage law. In doing so, I would find evidence of the New World Order, sources creating to replace Western civilization. In this endeavor, I utilize peer-reviewed studies, newspaper and magazine editorials, commentaries, interviews, and articles, government websites, and I transcribe the statement of a former president from an interview. I detail this process in my findings in my videos, The Divine Intervention of 1992, Parts 1 and 2. The law, again, was confirmed as the American presidency developed in lockstep with the predictions of the 3 stages. In the next section of this video, I'll revisit those findings in much less detail as part of my ultimate proof that Source has returned, is exacting judgment on America and its world order, and it's creating a new earth and a new world in 7 stages. Now that I've explained the 2 propositions of my law, let me briefly review how I followed the very same method to confirm my law that scientists use to validate Einstein's law of general relativity. I begin from the point of us both having published our laws and theories. A law tells you how something will behave, and a theory explains why a thing behaves as it does. His law states that light rays passing the sun would be deflected by 1.75 arc seconds. My law states that the Earth and America and its world order are being transformed into a new Earth and a new world order through a 7-stage process which began in 1992. His theory declares that this deflection of light is caused by the sun's warping of space and time. My theory declares that this 7-stage creation process is due to a divine judgment against Western civilization, its United States of America, and the American world order. The predictions made by our laws were then tested. The predictions made by both laws were confirmed and the laws found to be valid. The findings of the test were then published. My process and findings are available for you to view in detail through my set of videos. As you can see, I have followed the step-by-step, the same method used to validate Einstein's law of relativity, the scientific method. And as with Einstein, that method has validated the existence and operation of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stages of my law, and by extension, the law in its entirety. It's clear that the planet is being compelled to conform to Source's intent. This brings us to our theories. Here's a significant point of difference. Einstein arrived at his law and theories largely through an intense, sustained focus on the nature of light. It was through his mind and imagination, stimulated by conversations with friends, studies of the findings of other theoreticians, and contemplations of light, that he arrived at the insights leading to his theories and laws. Einstein declared, quote, "I want to know how God created the world. I want to know his thoughts." End of quote. For my part, I arrived at the law and theory I reveal not by thought and imagination, but actually physically living through the stages of the law. I lived the law. At a critical juncture in my life, a presence made itself known, and I became aware of being guided and taught. I was moved to look back over my years of experience, and I began to realize and understand the significance of those extraordinary otherworldly events I had endured. Through a period of reflection, study, and contemplation, I grew to know that each instance held a particular meaning and that together they signified a process of becoming. I began to document this process, divide it into stages based on those specific events, describe each stage according to what I experienced during that particular time, and note the dates for certain stages. At the beginning of 1992, through divine inspiration, I realized that this process I was undergoing and decoding was to have a universal application. Source imposed the process, its law, upon the earth and its inhabitants. It turns out Source had been teaching me what Einstein in part desired to know, how it creates a planet and a world. Though I had to exercise my mind in coming to know and understand the law, the basis of how I came to know the universal law and know that it is the will of Source is by my personal experience. I also know that there is no real separation between the law and its cause. The law and Source are inextricably intertwined. For this reason, I reluctantly use the term theory to refer to what I know to be the law's cause. Moreover, I reluctantly refer to the law's dictates as predictions. It is only for your benefit, for the purpose of demonstrating that Source is orchestrating the reconstruction of the earth and the reordering of the human social order, that I'm utilizing the West's highest standard for validating a claim, the scientific method, and its accompanying terminology, theory, and prediction. Einstein's theory wasn't proven until 2015, 100 years after he proclaimed it. Because Source's presence is inherent in its law, I will point out to you evidence of an intelligence operating as I explain the law as it unfolds. The greatest proof will be the completion of the process. This brings me to the main purpose of this video. In my earlier offerings, I published one video that detailed the law's impact on the trend of global average surface temperatures from 1998 through 2016. In my video series, The Divine Intervention Parts 1 and 2, I detailed the law's orchestration of the American presidency and thereby the human social order for that same period. The remaining videos contributed to the recognition of the law's orchestration of subsequent life-altering events through 2021, and thus to understanding the underlying meaning and significance of those physical expressions of the law. In the following section of this video, I will provide you with another confirmation of the law's existence, of its power to compel the earth and earth's inhabitants to conform to its process, and a confirmation of the law's intent. With the aid of a graphic, I will lay out and describe the second, third, and fourth stages of the law. Directly beneath those stages, according to the dates of the second and fourth stages, I will lay out the data representing the reconstruction of the earth, the global average surface temperatures. Beneath that row, in the same fashion, I will align the data representing the reorganization of the social order as expressed through the American presidency. What you will see is that both the earth and the social order are exhibiting the very same behaviors during the very same periods of time, and that their behaviors reflect the predictions of each stage and proceed from one stage to the next as the process of creation dictates. At this time, this may be the ultimate proof that a new earth and a new world are being simultaneously created, and that there is an intelligence authoring the process. First, using the titles and descriptions from my 1998 book, let me describe each of the three stages. The second stage I titled Defining. Defining means to determine the essential qualities of. From the book, at this point in the process, the tone for the era is set. The idea or nature of its energies is presented, however abstractly. The third stage I named Generating. Generating means the act of begetting, reproduction. From the book, the idea once defined is then sent forth to be brought into existence. At this third stage, the existing organism on which it is acting is subtly but visibly broken down. The defined idea acts as an adjutant, producing a state of high activity, excitement, unrest within the existing organism, effectively and efficiently decomposing it, freeing its components to reorganize according to the law of Aquarius into the new Aquarian entity. The fourth stage is transition. Transition means a changing from an earlier to a later form with the blending of old and new features. From the book, this is the point of crisis, the point at which the disintegration process of the existing organism reaches its climax in a spontaneous and instantaneous acceleration of the vibratory weight of the organism, serving to sever the binding agents that hold the present entity intact, releasing the life force, that quintessence which organized and held the individual components of the whole into a unified being according to its law, the law of Pisces in this case, in a violent ejaculation resulting in the liberation of the constituent parts. The life force is actually only partially released. After the first ejaculation, the vibratory rate of the organism slows down, the initial outburst having served to awaken the organism. Then there is a second surge in the vibratory rate with the organism conscious of the impending release of the life force. It is at this point that the ejaculation must be arrested, stopped, for if it is not, then the result will be the complete disintegration, obliteration of the organism. With the second ejaculation having been arrested, the defined idea now has the shell of a physical entity in which to manifest itself. It becomes the new nucleus or center of organization upon which a new ordering of physical components is based. Now that I've identified the stages, described the behavior to be expected at each stage, the predictions, let me now assign the dates. 1998 is the start date for the second stage. In my book referring to the second stage, I declared, quote, "We entered this phase with the publishing of this book," end of quote. The book was published in 1998, as you can see from the title page. In the treatise I first published in 1992, and which is also included in the book, I state, quote, "The year 2016 will be the crisis point in the first 30 years of the era," end of quote. 2016 begins the fourth stage. However, as is written in my description of the fourth stage, there is a second surge in the vibratory rate. As I revealed in my second video, The Divine Intervention of 1992, Part 1, this second surge would occur during the re-election campaign of Donald Trump. That was 2020. So 2020 identifies that second surge during the fourth stage. We now have the 3 stages of the 7-stage law. Let me now add to this a row for the global average surface temperatures, representing the creation of a new Earth. As I stated earlier, once I confirmed that 2016 had set a record for the hottest year ever recorded, a record that still stands, I then knew to retrieve the global average surface temperatures dating back to 1998 to see if there was a pattern among the temperatures that corresponded to the descriptions of the stages. I retrieved data sets from both NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I use and compare both sets in my first video. For the sake of simplicity, I will only use the NASA set for this video, and where there is a notable discrepancy between the NASA and NOAA data, I'll point that out. I found that there were indeed outstanding patterns in the global average surface temperatures. I start with the finding that 1998 set the global record for the hottest year ever recorded since NASA began keeping records in 1880. Thus, just as 1998 holds a distinguished place in my law, it is also distinguished in the record of global average surface temperatures. In fact, it remains the hottest year of the 20th century. 1998 began the stage of defining. It is the year that the seed idea presents itself. The seed idea symbolizing what source intends to create. In this case, its intent to create a new, warmer Earth. In short, the seed idea is the acorn that eventually becomes the oak tree. 1998 was further distinguished from other global heat record-setting years until 2015 by the fact that it emerged from the largest temperature jump from one year to the next in recorded history. And on the other side of this record-setting year, the global average surface temperatures for the 2 following years, 1999 and 2000, returned to temperatures well below that of 1997, making the 1998 heat event even more prominent and noteworthy. Hence, when the time came to prove source's presence and the operating of its 7-stage law, the 1998 heat event would stand out and match in significance the 1998 start of the 2nd stage of the law. Situated within its intended context, the true significance of the hottest year ever recorded at that time was thereby revealed. It is the seed idea of the new era, signaling the intent to create a new and warmer Earth. This is one example of a divine intelligence at work. With this, the prediction of a stage 2 is fulfilled. We move on to stage 3. I don't have a date for the beginning of stage 3, so I'll refer to the behavior it predicts as recorded in its description. According to the description, there should be evidence in the global average surface temperature data of the 1998 seed idea reproducing itself. Again, the seed idea is a new and warmer earth. Additionally, as the seed idea generates or reproduces itself, there should be evidence of a state of high activity, excitement, unrest, resulting in the existing organism on which it is acting being subtly but visibly broken down, which is to say the data should reflect a very volatile period in global average surface temperatures, and by extension, a volatile period in which the Earth, the existing organism on which the warming is acting, is subtly and visibly broken down. When looking at the data on global average surface temperatures from 1998 through 2015, that is the second stage through the third stage, this 18-year period is composed of the 16 hottest years ever recorded up to that time, with 15 of those years occurring since 2001. The sole year not of the 21st century being 1998, amongst this group now tied for the 12th hottest year on record. We can therefore conclude that the 1998 seed idea, a new and warmer Earth, did indeed meet the three behaviors predicted by the third stage. First, the 1998 seed idea reproduced itself. That is to say, the vast majority of the years succeeding 1998 were of its kind, years of global high temperatures. In fact, they were the hottest years ever recorded. Second, this trend of 16 of the 18 years of the period being the hottest years ever recorded up to that time speak to it being a time period characterized by a heightened energy level, in this case, an excitement generated by heightened global average surface temperatures. And third, if scientists have concluded that the warming Earth is the source of the accelerated melting of ice sheets and glaciers and the resultant sea rise, the desertification of land, the increase in the frequency and severity of droughts and wildfires, hurricanes and tornadoes, and the change in climates, and since, as I'm demonstrating, that the Earth is warming due to it conforming to the 7-stage process, then it is correct to conclude that the impact of this 18-year period of heightened temperatures obviously led to the increase and acceleration of the planet's breakdown. With this, I have demonstrated the behavior or trend of global average surface temperatures conforming to the predictions of the third stage. This increase and acceleration of the planet's breakdown reaches its peak, its crisis points, at and during the fourth stage. It is as we transition from the third to the fourth stage, the source again gives us the opportunity to witness and acknowledge its presence. By the end of the third stage, as the cluster of heightened temperatures produced continued disruptions in the Earth, Source utilizes a phenomenon that has only occurred one other time since NASA began keeping global temperature records in 1880. Giving the appearance of an intentional orderly ascension from one stage to the next, we transition from the third to the fourth stage as if by a stepladder. That is to say, it appears as if the heat generated during the third stage directly propelled us to the first crisis point of the fourth stage by producing 3 years in a row of record-setting global average surface temperatures. 2014 becomes the hottest year ever recorded, and the largest one-year jump in temperature on record, exceeding the record set in 1998, 2015 succeeds 2014 and becomes the hottest year ever recorded. In turn, 2015 is eclipsed by the hottest year on record to date, 2016, the beginning of the first crisis point of the fourth stage. Like the markers surrounding and highlighting the 1998 record, this uncommon graphic depiction of a step-by-step increase in heat and disintegrative power is far beyond a chance or coincidence. It is an intentionally arranged symbol of escalation and translation to the stage of crisis and transition. Such a sign indicates an intelligence at work, an intelligence that intends that we appreciate and question such a symbolic representation of a logical progression, and that through careful consideration you recognize and acknowledge its presence, and eventually come to realize that it is the author of the law. On to the fourth stage. We were awakened to the fourth stage by a jarring release of the life force. This release was much easier noticed in the realm of the American presidency, which I'll discuss later. At this crisis point, year 2016, the disintegrative energies have accelerated the vibratory rate of the entity it is dismantling to the point that which holds the entity together is suddenly and unexpectedly weakened, and the animating spirit or life force of the organism is partially released. Thereafter, the vibratory rate slows down for a while but surges again 4 years later in 2020. This second surge loosens even further the already strained binding mechanisms so that the actual organizing or founding principle of the entity is discharged. I've already discussed the 2016 record-setting global average surface temperatures marking the first crisis of the fourth stage. In my fourth video, The Divine Intervention of 1992 Part 2, published in December of 2019, with reference to then President Trump, I warned, quote, "The second surge is the buildup to his re-election. The law warns us that it is at this point, at the end of his first term, that Trump must be stopped. He must not be re-elected." End of quote. I'm here referring to 2020, which I explicitly state as the year of the second surge in my 2020 video on COVID-19. In 2020, according to NASA, the global average surface temperature as measured exceeded the 2016 record by 0.04 degrees. Yet due to the margin of error, NASA concluded that 2020 tied the 2016 record. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, ranks 2020 behind 2016 as the second hottest year ever recorded. Even with this discrepancy, both administrations found a relative spike in temperature that elevated 2020 to a place of prominence in accord with the second surge predicted by the law. With that, I've demonstrated that global average surface temperatures from 1998 through 2020 materialized as predicted by the descriptions of the second, third, and fourth stages of the law. Per the scientific method, this alignment proves the law is orchestrating the warming of the planet. The law operates with intent. Together, its stages comprise an ordered, creative process designed to materialize its intent. That the warming of the planet is proceeding as directed by the stages of the law indicates that the law's intent of creating a new earth is 4 stages into being realized. This is the judgment by fire. From the creation of the new earth, I now move to the creation of the new world. This is the third and final row of the graphic, the evidence proving the divine's reorganization of the social order. For the detailed study of what I'm about to present, please view my videos, The Divine Intervention of 1992, Parts 1 and 2, and my videos, COVID-19 is in Divine Order, and A Racial Reckoning? No, it's Divine Judgment and the Dispensing of Divine Justice. For my purpose, presently, I'll provide enough information to illustrate my point, that the coming into being of the new earth as represented by the pattern of global average surface temperatures and the coming into being of the new world as represented by the pattern of leadership of the new world are progressing together stage by stage according to the directive of the 7-stage universal law. The seed idea for the reorganization of the social order is the declaration, "This is our first Black president." Recall that the seed idea sets the tone for the era and represents the essential qualities of what Source intends to create. Like the small acorn that houses the components of an end product, many times its size, and which bears little to no physical resemblance to the seed from which it evolves, in a similar fashion, the seed idea bears the essential components of an end product that too is much greater than the literal phrase, "This is our first Black president." "This is our first Black president" is a statement written in 1998 by the late Black woman writer Toni Morrison in an October 5 commentary for New Yorker magazine. Then President Bill Clinton was being persecuted for the Monica Lewinsky sex scandal and threatened with impeachment. Morrison implies that African American men could see it coming, and asserts that they seemed to recognize it right away, years earlier during the Whitewater scandal. And what they recognized was that Clinton was being treated as if he was one of them, a black man in America, forever guilty, forever a criminal, always under suspicion. As the subject of white oppression, the standing warning to black men, in the words of Morrison, is that, quote, no matter how smart you are, how hard you work, how much coin you earn for us, we will put you in your place or put you out of the place you have somehow, albeit with our permission, achieved. You will be fired from your job, sent away in disgrace, and, who knows, maybe sentenced in jail to boot. In short, unless you do as we say, that is, assimilate at once, your expletives belong to us. End of quote. In Morrison's account, among African American men seeing themselves in the treatment of Clinton, starting with the Whitewater investigation, quote, one heard the first murmurs, white skin notwithstanding, this is our first black president. Morrison and others would later complain that her attempt to convey her disapproval of the ill treatment of President Clinton by likening it to the treatment endured by black men had been misconstrued as a declaration that Bill Clinton is our first black president. Yet it was this misinterpretation that took root and went viral. The divine intent behind the phrase, however, would ride this misconception into the third stage and begin the process of reproducing itself. Again, the third stage predicts three behaviors that must be exhibited in order to confirm the existence of the stage and its influence on the seed idea. There must be evidence of the seed idea reproducing itself. There must be evidence of the seed idea acting as an adjutant and producing a state of high activity, excitement, and even unrest. And due to this high activity, there must be evidence of the beginning of the breakdown or disintegration of the existing structure. This is our first black president literally reproduces itself in the presidency of America's first black president, Barack Obama. At the national level, we witness the generative process, the seed idea reproducing itself through the political evolution of then State Senator Obama, beginning with his 2004 address to the Democratic National Convention, after which talk began of him being America's first black president. We witness Obama's rise from state senator to U.S. senator to candidate for Democratic nominee for president to his winning the nomination and becoming the Democratic candidate for United States president, through the general election to his attainment of the presidency, the third stage form of the second stage seed idea, President Barack Obama, our first black president, on through to 2 terms ending in 2017 with the inauguration of 2016 President-elect Donald Trump. Here is the evidence for the seed idea reproducing itself. We witness Obama, the seed idea, acting as adjutant, unsettling the status quo by producing high states of activity, both positive and negative, with each state generating the disintegration of the United States. Positively, his first campaign for president elicited excitement in the form of, at that time, the highest popular vote for a presidential candidate in United States history at 69,498,516, according to the Federal Election Commission. His win broke or disintegrated the 220-year tradition of white male governance. Moreover, other severe cracks in the American way of life were detected. Obama's election was perceived by the majority of whites as threatening to displace them from the top rung of the white superior, black inferior racial hierarchy upon which America is founded. This threat to white rule triggered and heightened the customary white rage against perceived or actual black advancement. This time, the white rage organized into the Tea Party, the Birther Movement, and their non-member supporters. I have now demonstrated how the predictions of the third stage were fulfilled. Through Donald Trump, the third stage directly led to the fourth stage. Beginning in 2011, Donald Trump would tap into this vein of historic anti-Black hatred and resentment coursing through and driving the Republican electorate. He would become the leading advocate of the birther movement for approximately 5 years. Through his commitment to delegitimize the Black president, restore the office and governance of the nation to white rule, and in general restore the power and status of white people as intimated in Make America Great Again, Trump would earn the primary credential that would propel him past 16 contenders for the Republican nomination, most of whom held the conventional credentials expected of a candidate for the U.S. presidency, credentials that were no longer relevant to an enraged electorate who for 8 years endured the ultimate transgression and betrayal. A Black man as head of the United States. The fourth stage predicts 2 crisis points, one in 2016 and the other in 2020. Both crises are points at which the life force is released. Yet the first crisis point serves to awaken us to the intensified disintegration process underway. It only partially releases the life force. The life force is the spirit which animates a physical entity, be that entity a human being, an animal, a nation, whatever it may be. The life force flows throughout the physical entity it animates and springs from an organizing or founding principle, its seed idea. This principle defines, unifies, and holds together the entity it animates. It maintains its integrity. It keeps it whole. Preceding the second crisis point and leading to it, there is a surge in the intensity of the disintegrative energies. It is during this surge that the founding or organizing principle holding, in this case, America and its world order together, is discharged with just enough of the life force remaining to keep the shell of the world order together so that Source's new organizing principle, the founding principle of its new world, will have a body to reorganize and in which to gradually materialize. This is the transition from which the stage gets its name. As the surge continues, it must be stopped before it reaches the point at which it becomes the second crisis. If it is not arrested, then America and its world order will be completely annihilated and the opportunity for transition lost. As already stated, the first crisis point materialized in the human realm with the election of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency, accompanied by the worldwide shock at Trump's electoral victory over Hillary Clinton. In my video, The Divine Intervention of 1992, Part 1, I introduced Trump as the human embodiment of the fourth stage disintegrative energies and proceed to provide evidence of his disintegration of America and its world order. Here I'll cite a recent example of his innate disintegrative energies, his attempt to overthrow the United States government by calling his supporters to the Capitol and inciting the January 6, 2021 failed insurrection. The second surge occurred during Trump's re-election campaign late 2019 into 2020. I explained in my video, COVID-19 is in divine order, that COVID-19 was and is the second surge of the vibratory rate. The increasing vibratory rate served to heighten the impact of the disintegrative energies to the point that America's founding principle was ultimately revealed and fully exposed. This I explained in my video, A Racial Reckoning? No, it's divine judgment and the dispensing of divine justice. It was COVID-19 that revealed or made no longer deniable the systemic racism running throughout the American social order. And it was the voices and writings of many physicians, epidemiologists, public health professionals, lawyers, and other civil rights advocates, scholars, research institutes, and journalists that broadcast the news to the public. However, Source and its law were not through. Systemic racism is the underlying operating system of the United States. At the root of this racism is the founding principle of the United States, the white superior, black inferior hierarchy. Source and its law saw to it that this organizing principle of the outgoing world order would be put on full display for the world to see, discharged to make way for the seed idea of its new world order. This it did on May 25th. As we watched Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin defiantly kneel full weight on the neck of George Floyd in public view, knowingly being videotaped but acting as if there would be no consequences for his action, kneeling beyond the point of having choked all life from Floyd, we were watching a living demonstration of a very founding principle upon which America has been built and from which sprang the racism inherent in all things American. A graphic display of the white superior, black inferior hierarchy. The second crisis we avoided by diminishing the surge, voting the human embodiment of the fourth stage disintegrative energies Donald Trump out of office. It would have taken both expressions of the disintegrative energies to bring us to the point of death. As I conclude my demonstration of the social order conforming to the predictions of the second, third, and fourth stages, note that the now discharged organizing principle of the United States, the white superior, black inferior hierarchy, can be seen operating throughout the second, third, and fourth stages. The white superior, black inferior hierarchy is the living circumstance of African American men which, according to Morrison, provided them insight into the treatment of then President Bill Clinton and led them to conclude, this is our first black president. It was the ever-present spirit of the hierarchy that ignited the white rage as the seed idea took its third stage form in the United States' first black president, Barack Obama. The desire to protect the hierarchy moved Republicans to select Donald Trump from amongst 16 other competitors for the Republican nomination for president. To champion and preserve the hierarchy, they voted Donald Trump into office. And during the surge, the United States founding principle, the white superior, black inferior hierarchy, was discharged to make way for what will become the fifth, sixth, and seventh stage expressions of this is our first black president, which as the future unfolds, you will see has little to do with an individual holding office. Taking all of these events into account, note that former President Donald Trump was correct. He was chosen by God to be president for that specific time and for the specific task that he performed, severely tearing or irreparably loosening the ties that held together America and the American world order. But he wasn't alone. In fact, Source chose Toni Morrison to introduce the seed idea, its intentions for the new social order. And Source chose Barack Obama to be the third stage expression of that intent. Source is orchestrating this entire process. We are free to do as we will to a certain point, but know what Source wills will be manifested. When we compare my two propositions that a new Earth is being created as represented by global average surface temperatures, and that a new world is being created as represented by the seed idea, this is our first black president, working through the American presidency, it is clear that both propositions are reacting to the very same directives during the very same periods of time. Their synchronized behaviors are the very behaviors predicted by the second, third, and fourth stages of the law. Thus, their behavior confirms the existence of the second, third, and fourth stages, and by extension, the existence of the seventh stage law. Moreover, their synchronized behaviors demonstrate the law's power to compel the earth and human society to conform to its process and intent. We have completed the first half of the seven-stage process, stages 1, 2, and 3. At the end of 2021, we will have completed the stage transitioning us from the second half to the second half of the process, stage 4. The first half of the process served to break the ground, disintegrating the present earth and world in preparation for the emergence of the new earth and new social order during the second half of the process. Having replaced the discharged organizing principles of the former earth and social order during the fourth stage, beginning in 2022 with entry into stage 5, we will begin to see the maturing of the seed ideas as they begin to reorganize the remains of the disintegrated earth and social order according to the divine design. With regard to the seed idea, this is our first Black president, we will begin to see its fifth, sixth, and seventh stage expressions in the rebirth of Black people and their positioning into the leadership of Source's New Earth and New World. In closing, in the introduction to this teaching, I summarized my message for you. Next, I demonstrated that I too have been and am using the same scientific method to confirm the truth of my revelation that was used to verify Einstein's theory of general relativity. Finally, I presented to you what at this time may be the ultimate proof that the earth and the world are being created anew simultaneously through the 7-stage process which began in 1992, and I provided evidence of Source's presence, its authorship, and orchestration of the process, evidence of its return. I'll be back to talk to you at some point before we enter the 5th stage. Peace.